Well, good morning, everyone. My name is James Henderson, and welcome to our Friday Fundamental on 3D. And what I hope to do over the course of the next 45 minutes is simply take you through a little bit about 3D. And you see an animation that's been running for the last couple of minutes for those of you who have been signed in. And in essence, I put this on so you can simply see the power of what can be done within the software. What I'm going to try and take you to over for the next 45 minutes is some of the fundamentals that I think are important for achieving 3D. And the fact of the matter is that I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but we work and live in an environment now where things have changed about designing for our clients. They want to see a photorealistic image of what their design is going to look like prior to sometimes even signing the contract to let you get started on it. And so some of the or everything that we're going to be working on today is actual projects that I have done, that I have worked on myself, to try and show you what it takes to get at least from point A to point B so that we can show a client at least a fairly close proximity of where they're going with the design. So what you'll see over here on the left-hand side of the screen that I have is this would be the proposal that we had for a kitchen design. Okay, now in this case here, the original kitchen, if you will, had a dining room on the other side of the wall. And so what we were going to do is basically gut this entire thing down to the studs, take the wall out because the dining room was not desired at this point. And this was going to allow us, by taking the wall out, to expand this kitchen into something that was going to be usable for entertaining, etc. So we moved from this to proposing the animation the image you see in the upper left hand corner to what you see as the final product when it was all said and done. And as you can, see, we got very, very close as to, image versus finality. This is another one that I'm working on, whereby this is actually the look-see in at what was proposed for a bathroom. Okay, and this is what the final model or final, product looked like when we were completed. And so in this case, this leads to happy clients. They saw ahead of time what it's going to look like, and you were able to produce those results within the software, and then finally, end with the product or the final design looking like what you propose as far as the image. Okay. So what I want to take you through is basically everything that goes into a 3D as quickly as possible. We're going to spend about 20 minutes on the exterior of a house, and then we're going to move inside and we're going to spend about 20 minutes on the interior of the house. And obviously 20 minutes is not a lot of time to be able to spend on this, okay, but it will give you an overview of what this can look like. And I would basically tell you that if this is something that intrigues you and something you want to learn more about, I will offer a 3D training class in the middle of July that will take a lot of what we talk about today and expand upon it over 4 days. So just something that you may or may not be interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and close or minimize these out of the way. And what in essence we have is just an exterior house at this stage. Okay, and if you were taking a look at this, as far as the design is concerned, okay, so we see basically it's going to be a large farmhouse. And if I were looking at the front elevation, it looks something like this, as far as the save, or if you're looking at it from a three-dimensional perspective, something like this. Okay, and basically when we're looking at this inside the 3D, I am in textured mode, initially to start. And what I'm going to do is we're going to start by, I'm going to change this into shaded mode. When I'm working inside 3D, in a lot of cases, just approximating camera angles and texture assignments, etc., I will work within shaded mode, and inside the options and mode options, okay, under face options, I'll turn the textures on. What this does is it gives me a very quick proximity of what things look like, what textures are going to be there, without having to wait for the generation time, if you will, for the 3D model, to get a high-end rendering. Now you can turn the anti-aliasing on, and what the anti-aliasing will do is, for lack of a better term, it just crisps up the image. So you can see simply enabling that under the renderer, enabling anti-aliasing, and then increasing that from basically 0 to 4, how crisp the image got right away. Okay, and so as I hold down the mouse wheel and I begin to pan around this model, and I can tell you at this stage, this is an actual design. So this is something that is going to be built here in Nashville shortly. Okay, so but it's still a little bit in progress of finalizing the design. But overall, I wanted to use a real world project, and so one of the things that I will do as well, and you'll see right now, is I've got in the background kind of these odd shapes, and all this is just a three-dimensional polygon or cube, and then roofs built up with triangles. And there's basically some barns on the property, and so what I'm looking to do is just simulate those in the background. Okay, just by drawing them in using three-dimensional shapes. What I want to get to at this stage right off the top is getting this accurately on a site. Okay, and that's going to be key. So once I've got myself my 3D, okay, and I'll explain the 3D camera options in just a moment. I'm going to pop into my site plan. So this is basically the site as sketched out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you how you can import for your 3D models directly from Google Earth all of the topography to go with this. Now understand, when I do this, this is not to replace what the surveyor does, but this is going to shoot the shot points for me that they have already done input into Google Earth to get me a close proximity to what things look like. Okay, so what you would do at this stage is I'm going to just simply type in the address, okay, of where this is going to be. All right, and so in this case here, as I begin to type this in, I'm here in Franklin, Tennessee, so I'm going to do a quick search. Okay, and it's going to zoom in. Now, some of the stuff I've already jumped ahead a little bit on. So, for example, once I've got the address right here, this is my property. This is what I'm looking for to go with this option right here. And I've rotated the north point, which is lesson unto itself. Okay, to basically orient this the same as my floor plan, which is horizontal in nature and the front facing towards the bottom of the screen. The key here is at this stage, I have dragged and dropped, okay, the point onto the drawing so that when I edit this, which is the front corner, I can actually pull from this the properties that go with the place mark. Okay, so it was just simply, I already had one on here, but it was just drag and drop to place the place mark, and then I right click and grab this information right here. This is going to be key for me in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I've dragged that off to a second size part of the screen, and inside the 3D, I'm going to right click and import the Google Maps site data. Okay. Now, when I do this, all right, I'm going to say yes to importing that, and it automatically imports this information. The point that I placed on the map, okay, is right there in the corner, which is relative to this right here. I'm going to undo this real quick and just take it back. So this is a flat site at this stage. And so inside your 3D model, what you can do is you can go into your sun options. I'm going to, select my geolocation point, and this information right here is what I'm matching up with my place mark. Okay, so inside options and sun options, I input this information to match what I have over here. Okay, and once I have done this, inside the actual site plan itself, which I just call Google Earth Import, I'm just going to right click and import this information, okay, with this. Now, this is a SoftPlan Plus function for sure. But what you'll see at this stage now is as I zoom this up, I've got all of the elevation information being pulled off. And what's fascinating is when you're designing, obviously, you don't necessarily get all of the nuances of what the site is going to look like until you actually place, the information in. And then all of a sudden you can begin to see how the slopes of the lot are going to work. Now, in my case, I'm going to now elevate or change the location of the house relative to the site. And so once again, inside 3D, I've got my default elevation built, mark here, and then I can offset the building position up or down. Okay, and so that's when I'm taking a look at this information in the model, the site plan is on the bottom, followed by in my space, the crawl space, the main floor, and then a dormer plan that I have. And so as I come back into 3D shaded, we can now see if you will, what the slope of the lot is going to do as it drops from this corner down to this corner. Okay, so that's a really quick overview of how to get that information in. Now, as far as things like driveways and all of that, obviously we can do that, and et cetera. And we can also, you've got a host of tools that can be used within the plan. So up here, you can draw objects, you can move them, you can erase them, etc. So in my case, I can simply move information if I'm attempting to get a three-dimensional model just the way I want it. So now that we have, at this stage, the exterior of the model, okay, we're set. We're still working in shaded mode. So what I'm going to do is just explain the camera, because you can see me moving around, and it's, how am I getting around, so to speak, so quickly. So over here on the 3D viewer, okay, as I drag it onto the screen, you'll see that we've got a series of triangles that point into the middle. And as I click any one of these triangles, what it does is it basically zooms me from that side looking down. Okay, so that's your quick overview of how to zoom in. And obviously, because I have a sight, my entire zoom perspective gets much larger. If it were just I was looking at the house only, then this would be much closer. Now, in addition to that, okay, the red circle that you see inside the outside, viewpoints looking in, okay, one of the things is to consider this like you have a giant dome over your project. Now, my project includes a site plan right now. Okay, so if I were to remove this, then obviously my dome would get smaller and only cover the house part. Now, when you click on this dome, if you will, okay, this red circle, the closer to the outside that you click, okay, the shallower the camera to focus point is going to be. And so I'm just going to remove this for just a second from the model, and I'll say yes. Okay, and I'm just going to save my changes so that now as I zoom on this here, you can see it zooms me up much tighter. And as I click towards the bottom of the circle, my elevation is much shallower, so to speak, as opposed to looking down. Continuing to look at this, if I move 90 degrees from that corner and I click here, it's going to control my angle that I'm looking at and rotate it 90 degrees for me. Okay, and now once again, watch, if I don't move my cursor, it's going to do the same thing. Rotate me 90 degrees and adjust the angle automatically. If I move my cursor back to the bottom and I click, it only adjusts the current view. And so the difference between the triangles, if you will, and the circle is this. The triangles adjust the angle automatically to that, looking down from that 45 degree, whereas the circle adjusts the current view as if it were the current view is the front view. Okay, so it adjusts according to whatever that current view is. The circle in the middle automatically gives you a bird's eye down. Now, the 3D camera control that you see right here, the left, right, up, down, and plus and minus would do everything that you would expect them to do, whether it's moving you up or down, left or right. And the binoculars that you see here, when I click on this, it will allow me to automatically click on something and it will zoom that to the largest possible zoom scale. So again, if I'm zoomed out here somewhere, okay, and then I zoom in, I'm like, oh, I've got an issue back here. And I've set this up a little bit so that we can see, I can see, okay, I've got something, just whatever I did, my wall heights, etc., need to be adjusted. I could then come in this case, I could, adjust the wall, okay, so that I'm adjusting its actual height and just adjust it down if it were too tall. Okay, I could edit the wall, so I could also right click and edit this wall, and I could tell it to fit to roof so that we no longer see it, and so on. And you could even use the erase item to remove something. So the benefits of being able to zoom, this information in a little bit so that you can see all of it, okay, allows me to be able to see things and adjust and modify them within the 3D. Okay, now I won't spend a lot of time, changing it. I just basically did a few things on, intentionally just to kind of, see what we're doing. And in this case, I'll just take that out. All right, so erasing, moving, and editing. Okay, So that's how we can maneuver around using some of the 3D views. Now you'll see that I'm also doing some things where I'm not actually moving, it seems like, without touching either one of these. Holding down the mouse wheel is going to allow me to orbit the model. So when I hold down that third button in the middle and just move my cursor, it will allow you to orbit. And then the combination of Control plus the arrow keys or Shift plus the arrow keys is also going to allow you to move about. Okay, so this gets us, if you will, very quickly where we're going to sit as far as the model is concerned. I would like to put my grass back in, so I'm going to find my site plan once again, okay, that I had, which was my Google Earth import. I'm going to add it to the model, and I'll say yes to saving my changes thus far. And one of the things that you have to, I buried it in the house, is you always have to have the site on the bottom, okay? That may not seem important. If this is a 3D class, maybe you thought you were only going to learn about textures, but if you don't have the site plan on the bottom, then you can't get an accurate grade line as far as your model is concerned. Okay. So what I will do is I will use a combination oftentimes of arrow keys on the keyboard, using the mouse, if you will, to rotate my model, okay, and get things, set. All right, something like so. And if these are in the way, I can always put them back. I'll just hit the Windows and reset to set this up. Now, again, I am sitting in the, if you will, the shaded mode. I'm going to change it at this stage into textured mode. Okay, and so when I do this, it's going to take me into a higher end, and you can see there's a little bit of brightness and going on as far as the model is concerned. So let's modify this a little bit. Okay, the number one thing you'll want to do is get your lighting. And once you get your lighting set, then I would go about changing things like textures, etc. So I will, inside my 3D, after changing into textured mode, I'm going to come in here to my sun options, and I'm going to turn the custom lighting on. Now, when I do this, okay, we'll get to, it got very dark very quickly, all right, where I can come in at this stage now, and I can begin to change my location and where that sun is going to be. And in this case here, as you can see, I'll begin to change, where the sun is pointing, or from what direction, so to speak, on the model. Okay, so that's one thing that is going to change about the lighting. The same thing, I'm going to come in here as far as the lighting is concerned. Okay, and as I modify this, I'm turning the custom on, and now I can get into the the ambient light, which is basically, this is going to increase or decrease the brightness, the overall brightness of this model. The headlight is basically, think of yourself as wearing like a miner's hat, and so you have a light that's projecting from where you are, on the model itself. Okay, and you can change that inside the model there. Okay, if I go into indirect lighting, all right, now we start to get into where I'm going to change the overall brightness and indirect contributions of, depending on the various surfaces that are on here, okay, and other lighting that's there. Obviously, removing this takes or turns that off, so to speak, on there. As I go into shadows, this is going to begin to add depth to the model. Okay, so undoubtedly, that's, once you get your lighting set, okay, and again, you can see me just kind of, twerking around a little bit here, just getting a few things just set like so, okay, and then I can either turn the lights on or off as far as the model is concerned, and even the tone mapping, which is going to, at this stage, begin to modify a little bit of the depth on this. And so all of those add to it. Inside the mode options, again, this is going to increase, for me, the level of depth that I'm going to see, as far as firming up the lines on there. So increasing that anti-aliasing from a 0 to a 7 or an 8, you can just see how much crisper the actual image is going to be. Okay. Gamma is an overall brightness of the model. So this is honestly, this is entirely user, up to the user themselves. Some of you like it really bright. I sometimes get a little bit guilty of going with a darker type image, just because I like the depth on it. But so I will leave that entirely up to you. But just understand, turning this basically just goes in and overall brightens the entire model. Okay, so that's gets us to this point here. Now, So we've talked about the render real quick here. We've talked about the lighting, or at least some of the lighting options that are in there. Okay, and as far as the face options are concerned, right now we have the textures turned on. We are in texture mode, and this is also where I turned it on inside the shaded mode. But now we can get into turning on things like reflections. And so as I do this, okay, what it's going to do is, if a surface has been modified to have a reflection on it, it's going to show that up. Now notice the the blocks as it's rendering the image. This is because my anti-aliasing is cranked up to the level that it is. And so as it goes across surfaces, depending on what has to be calculated, like reflections, okay, it could slow down the overall model. All right. But the nice thing about this is, let me go back into my Google Earth for just a moment. Okay. And I'm just going to grab a tree. And I'm going to move this over here, and I'm going to have a couple of copies. And the reason I'm doing this is just simply I want to create some reflections at the front of the house. And while I'm here, I'm going to change into a mode called 3D. Now, what the 3D will allow me to do is actually from here also move my camera angle to see what it is that I want to see. Now, those trees I just placed a second ago, if I go back here and I edit this tree, okay, so it's just a magnolia tree that I put in here, okay, I can check the visible in all modes. And once I've done an edit, repeat edit box, okay, I just want to get some of these trees so that when I'm inside the 3D mode, I'll be able to see if that tree is going to impede, my view. And one of the things that you're going to see me do here is, and again, this is a personal preference, but I like to have the trees kind of frame the outside of the model. So this is my focus point, over here, and this is my field of view as I'm looking at the model. And as we come back into the 3D, we can now see we get, kind of the trees on either side. Okay, and depending on where things are at, I could then start to get any kind of a reflection and so on beginning to show up on the model. All right. So that's, just placing some trees so we can see them, turning on our reflections. And what I can do is, once I've turned on my reflections, I just did a right click on the glazing of that window. And so when I do this and I go into into lighting, okay, you can see my reflectivity is set at 10. Now, chances are 35 is going to be too bright. But if you do this on a model, okay, because these windows are the same and the glazing is going to carry over, all right, and I'm just going to make sure that I get something a little bit closer so that it shows up, and then I'm going to re-render this. And what I'm hoping to do is just capture real quick inside the glazing just a little bit right there. I don't know how well it's going to show where you are, but we can begin to catch that glazing reflecting the trees in the windows. And so again, we would just modify that. So going back to my options and going back into my mode options, okay, so there's our reflections. Now we've got relief depth. And what relief depth will do is, it's basically called bump mapping technology, so to speak. We have a brick texture, or sorry, stone texture right here. And realistically, that's kind of flat right now. And so when you enable your relief depth, what SoftPlan will do is the internal renderer will go in and, using the bump mapping technology, create the artificial depth based on the pixels and the picture, etc. Okay, so as I do this, and what I'll do is I'm going to zoom this up. I can always zoom back in just a second. So I'm going to stop this. I'm going to move it into shaded. I'll often do this where I zoom in and do my shading or my camera angle in shaded mode to begin with. Then I can jump back into textured. And I'm going to do a surface edit on this. Okay, and you see I click on the texture field. Now let's just say I wanted to change this to something that was more of a kind of a brick texture. Okay, something like this. All right, now I'll regenerate this image. Okay, so again, the anti-aliasing, that's going to be something I'm maybe going to turn down just a little bit, just because of the speed with which it's rendering. And I have a pretty powerful computer here. So while this is coming up, if you're wondering what you need to invest in, okay, video card and the onboard memory is everything. Okay, so what you will see at this stage is, as I edit this image right here, okay, and I go into lighting and I turn on the relief depth, as I turn that up, okay, it's going to, the higher the number, the better that this is going to look, where the brick and the mortar, if you will, it will create that indentation. Now, it's subtle. Um, but it certainly shows on my screen as I'm getting this, done. So I'm going to, pull myself back a little bit at this stage. And so I'm just, using the arrow key to pull back. And so that's going to get us our farmhouse with kind of a brick texture, on the bottom. Now, one more thing that you might want to do is, you wanted the brick, but let's say you wanted to change. You can see that bump mapping as I pulled back. That brick is actually popping on my screen. So hopefully it's a little bit for you there. But you could come in and you could do a surface edit on this brick. And, a lot of times we get the question, how do I paint that brick? I wanted a different color, but I wanted the brick hatching. So one of the things you can do is you could come in here and you could, display color, turn it, whatever color that you wanted. So let's just say I was going to go for more of a gray, okay, because I've already got white up top. And then what you'd want to do is you want to have your relief depth on. And when you do this and you regenerate that, okay, it will paint the brick, but using the bump mapping or the relief depth technology, you will get, the recesses in the brick and get the pattern on there. Okay, so at this stage, it's just a matter of hitting the regenerate. You can see it's now, painting the brick across there, but I'm also getting, the bump mapping technology on. Okay. So that's, we're just trying to get this to the outside of this, to where we want it to be. So I'm going to go back into my 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 options, and my mode options right here, and I'm going to click on the background. And here I'm just going to, click on my, my panoramic, and it pulls up my, my background images. Okay. And so in this case here, if I wanted to see what these look like, I could scroll through. Okay. These are just JPEGs. So you can pick whatever, you want, or you can even take your own picture of skies. So if you're going for, more of a cloudy scene, so to speak, excuse me, I could go ahead and, put, that in as my image on the model. And even something like that adds depth to the actual model itself. So you can see how quickly we're getting, there. You can see the reflections in the standing seam metal roof. Notice the tree reflecting in the glazing over here, and the same thing with the glazing over here. So all of that, happening real quickly. And then, of course, if I go back to the sun options, I took you in through the geolocation point, but now I could go in and I could begin to cast, images, different shadows, just to see what this is going to look like at different times of the day. And so you can see at this stage now, I begin to cast longer shadows onto the model. Okay, so all of this just being done inside textured mode. And this is, a lot of people spend time going into, if you will, the Raytrace mode. And I find that, for what I'm trying to do, a lot of times texture covers a lot of that off automatically for me. And so that's, very quickly, if I were to sit down with a client, at this stage and just show them this, very likely would be, more than enough for them to get, a handle on what that house is going to look like. Okay. So not to say that we can't come into the Raytrace mode and begin the rendering on this, but as I start this mode, as it goes in to begin to calculate all of the shadows, etc., that is going to come at a cost, okay? As it calculates the reflections and the lighting, etc., it's going to give you a much more accurate, depiction of the model. It's going to become crystal clear, certain things, etc. But again, just hitting the start on this is going to show you how long that can take. And so in this case, I'm stopping it, because of what we're doing as far as the daytime is concerned, at the time of day and what we've got. Now, while that's, just stopping, let me pull this up. This is where we're going with this on the inside. This is a fully textured kitchen that resides inside this house. Okay, and so while that's just rendering the background, let me just show you. The cabinets that you see are all stock. Everything here, as far as the cabinets is concerned, is stock. This is a Kohler sink. This is, a faucet I found at the Bizzo library, I do believe. All of these place settings, these came with, are updated as part of the SoftPlan Plus. The Wolf stove also comes with it. I forget the refrigerator, but again, the refrigerator in that is all custom, or sorry, all stock. The custom symbols come from with the stools okay, this lighting fixture right here, okay, and even some of the spices that you see on the walls. Now, all I do for this, just while I was waiting for the model to finish or to stop, okay, as I go into textured mode, okay, is you're just going to, I go to 3D Google Warehouse to find some of the symbols that I'm looking for. And so changing this into shaded mode for just a minute, because remember, that's how I like to move around. It's quicker, okay? I will pick the binoculars right here, and I will click on the doorway to begin to walk in, okay? Now, all I'm doing is hitting the up arrow key to begin the animation process, okay, with the client. All right, so there's an extra light fixture I don't need in there, so I'll just simply erase that and take it out. See how quickly that does that inside the textured or the shaded mode. As I pan to the left or I pan to the right, you can see all of this information that can be seen and shown and displayed. So here is, the kitchen itself. Okay, now by default, what this is going to look like for some of you is when you come in here, and let me just load the default 3D SPM. Okay, uh, so you see what it looks like out of the box. This is it here. And so if I take that into textured mode, even with textured mode, obviously, some of the textures and so on leave a little bit, as far as lacking, for mixing and matching together. So what can we do? In this case here, the cabinets themselves were edited, and they were just simply assigned the paint color on here. So they're white in nature. The texture back here, I can do a surface edit on the texture, which was drawn using interior mode, and I'll show you that in just a moment. And so this is the default tile texture that's here. I can tell you, I use a lot of manufacturers, and I use the SoftPlan Plus library almost exclusively. Okay, so if if you're a SoftPlan Plus subscriber, what I'm about to show you, you have access to. If you don't, okay, and then what you would, and you wanted some of these textures, you would actually have to go through the manual steps of importing them yourself. So what I can do is I'm just going to go down here to, let's say, Mosa tile, for example, and I begin to scroll through, okay, looking for the various textures that are. Let me just stop this, okay, and as I click, you can see the textures as I pull up. I can get the preview. So this would be the texture that I want to add. And this is why I'll do this in shaded mode with texture on. See how quickly that generated for me? Good. All right, now I can do a surface edit here on this cabinet right here. Once again, I would go back into the manufacturer. Okay, I'm going to go back down to, let's just say, SoftPlan Plus, and I'm going to go into the Cambria library, and I'm just going to scroll through to find, that's or I can go by picture, right? And let's just say I'm going to go with this gray, and it shows that to me right away. Okay, so you can see how quickly I can get that in there. All right, same thing. Now this right here is just a solid plane. So let me show you kind of a real quick of how I did this. Okay, so I'm going to move the, let me just get this out of the way. So I'll erase that for right now. So what I have here is I just have a niche library item that I drew. Okay, and so once I drew the niche, which is just, draw opening niche, pick the size that you want, okay, draw it in the wall. Then what I have is I placed in here a SoftPlan plane. So if I were to move this, for example, out here, okay, this was just found under draw, solid, okay, and I went to the plane option, and you can just draw that plane there. You can then edit that plane, and you can give it a height, and you can give it an offset, which is what I did. Okay, now if you come back into, I'm going to undo that one. If I come back into 3D shaded, what do I have? A large blue square that's the same size as the niche. Now I can do a surface edit on this, and this is where I can go into textures, and I'm just going to go down now and find, what it is that I'm looking for. And so I'm going to do a search because I think I have a custom one in here somewhere. And so I'll just go down. I'll pick the black and white one for right now. Okay, so very quickly, and while I'm here, I could specify, what the size of that's going to be so that it's much smaller. Okay, so again, I now have this as far as my options concerned. Okay, and as I go back into the model, I would just simply move this into place because I've got the offset set, and now I've created that niche. Now, obviously the black and white doesn't go all that well with this, so I would probably, for what I'm doing, I'm going to do an edit, surface copy paste, and put the brick stone in there, and then I'll edit this, and I will just pick, maybe something else from the MOSA library that's just going to fit better with the kitchen look. Okay. So as I zoom this out, we can see, I've got the brick wall on there. I've got, this information, here, and then I'm going to, do a surface edit on the floor. Now I'm going to add this, and then we're going to take it through a couple of, just changing some of the faces real quick. Okay, so I'll go into the manufacturer, and from the manufacturer, I can go down into SoftPlan Plus, and I'm going to go into the floorboard. And again, some of this is just, repetition for me. I'm used to it, so I know where it is, and I click OK, and it pulls it up. All right, so for time's sake, let's just say we were done with this. Okay, so I would take this into textured mode now, and I'd hit the regenerate, and I would actually usually stop it right away, because what I want to do is come in through my options, my mode options, make sure I've got my lighting where I want it to be. Gamma usually is something I turn on in interiors, and the reason is it just brightens that model up for you. Okay, on my face options, make sure my reflections are turned on. Relief depth may or may not play in on the interior, it all depends, but the key here is if the reflections are turned on and I do a surface edit on this floor and I go into the lighting and make sure reflectivity is turned on here. Okay, and I'm just going to overdo this. I'm going to create a floor that looks like it's been waxed, to the max, so to speak. Okay, and I'll hit regenerate now, and so this is going to go through and begin the calculations for me. If you're wondering, I may have said this already, these are custom light fixtures that I put in there. So you're not going to find that in your library, but I show it because I want to be able to show off to you, what you can accomplish if you take the time to go ahead and find it, So, and I'm going to show you where you can find, some of these, symbols as well, just so you get a chance to maybe go and take a look. So let me this is just rendering real quick. So what you can see as this goes through, okay, the lighting and the shadows. Notice the reflections in the wall. So I can actually see the sink on the wall. And while that may be overdone a little bit, it really does add the depth to the model. And like I said, I've got a very, very powerful computer right here. So I'm using an NVIDIA video card. I'm not sure off the top of my head how much memory's on board, but it's pretty big. But see what I did? I overdid the reflection. So, I mean, like, that's, kind of why you want to keep it around 10 to 15. But it gives you a feel for that. You can see the reflections in the refrigerator. And very quickly, wow, we've got some depth, okay, to the overall model. The gamma brightens it up. So again, if that's, that's entirely up to you as far as what your cup of tea is for that. So if you were, where do I find these 3D symbols? And I've only got about 8 minutes left. You would basically go to 3D Warehouse, okay? Just do a search on Google. You will have to create an account for this, okay? But now I could do a search. Let's just say I do a search for Harley, okay? Because I don't have a Harley Davidson in there. All right, I can go through and I can find the symbols for that, okay? At this stage now, I can download that, model into my plan. Okay, so if if you were trying to do a search for, let me just do a quick, stool table, so to speak. Okay, so if this was the, you can see they vary in quality as far as what they, they are concerned. Okay, so again, maybe the Harley was the better, the better bet, just because I got something. You would simply download this and then use SoftPlan's wizard to be able to import this symbol into your plan. So once you have downloaded this symbol, okay, you will simply come in through within your floor plan. You'll select File. You'll go in through System Options and System Library to do it. And when you get here, you will either pick the library you want to put it in, okay, or you can, at that stage, or create a new library. You'll see I have a library in there you don't have. Gym equipment. Well, I was doing a project that involved having, a home gym and they wanted to know space-wise, how does everything, work? So in this case here, I did an add library and added the gym to it. Now, once that has been, set, I would click on the wizard option, okay? And I'm just going to say the name of the symbol is XYZ for right now, okay? And I'll click the next option. And I don't have it on my drawing screen, so I'll say no and I'll click the next. And now I'm just going to import the 3D symbol. And so as I come back to the 3D symbol, I'll click on this free weight symbol, okay? And the library, I'm going to stick it in anywhere right now because I'm just trying to do time, but we can create our own folder, and I will click OK. And what SoftPlan is going to do for me now is it's importing the free weight symbol that I downloaded from the Google SketchUp. And so now I can click next, and this allows me to orient. Is this the correct views, top, left, right? And if it's not, then you select no, and you can click the next button. And then from here, you can then pick top of symbol. That's correct. Okay, where is the front view of the symbol? Okay, so I select this. All right, and then where is the left side? And again, okay, I just continue to pick, where I think that's going to be, and then I click next. The textures come from whoever created the symbol, and the dimensions to make sure it was done to scale. And then at this stage, I can actually define when this is drawn. Does it reference the ground, floor, ceiling, etc.? So there's your symbols, and then I can simply click generate. And when I do the generate, it's going to go in there and it's going to actually create the two-dimensional symbol for me of this, so that it's now saved into that library automatically. And so that's how you can quickly, if you have a manufacturer that you're using, okay, you could actually beef up your libraries to suit what you want. And as I said, I use this to do a complete home gymnasium. So the other thing you'll want to know, okay, as I kind of begin to look to wrap this up, is after you've created the image like this with all of your custom symbols or whatever you may have drawn, okay, you may want to save this texture file to load it elsewhere, in another model. So you may have one that's white siding gray brick, okay, like I did outside, or this texture, this tile pattern automatically gets drawn. You would simply come in through File, okay, Material File, and you want to save it. And when I do this, I can save this in. So I'm just going to call this Friday Fundamental, kitchen, right? And so when I do this and I click Save, that material file is now saved as a system option. I could open a new project. I could then come in through File, Material File, and Load, and I could load that Friday Fundamental Kitchen, okay, and load it in there. So for example, I'm going to load the default 3D SPM for just a minute and allow it to generate us back to scratch, so to speak, right? So here it comes, all right, and I'll change it right into shaded so we see it. And now I'm going to come in through File, Material File, and Load. This is the one we saved, but realistically, this is the one I want to use because it's got more defined options on there. So I'll open it and I'll just let it regenerate. And so now it's going to go in and update all of the textures, the reflections, etc. And so when I change this into textured mode, okay, I'm going to get a much more, finished model automatically there. Okay, so that's a huge one for you to know so that you can save these going forward and set up some defaults. So you're not always picking the same hardwood, time and again. You can actually reload these from scratch to automatically, get your model, further ahead. And if you do this, and if you pick things up like this, I'll just let this generate, okay? You'll be able to go in and create 3D animations, etc. And so as you see this begin to stop, it's the last thing that I want to do. I'm going to pull this outside, and I'm going, basically as fast as I can to show you as much information as possible. I'm going to change this into shaded mode again because this generates the quickest. But what a lot of us want to know is, how do I create an animation? Okay, how do you do the walkthrough like the one that was showing just prior to the class starting? Okay, and so here we are outside the house to start. Okay, I'm going to click on camera, and at this stage I'm going to click new animation. Okay, so we have now got this slider bar across the bottom, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, this is going to be pretty quick. Okay, so I'm going to at this stage click the binoculars. Okay, and I'm going to zoom up to this post, and then I'm going to click this little triangle or little cross down here, and when I do that, what it does is it adds in, this keyframe. And so at this stage, to go from here to there, okay, it shows 9.34 seconds. And so now I use my arrow keys, and SoftPlan will automatically adjust as we maneuver towards the model, so going up the stairs, etc. But once I got to a new point, I can click, and so I'm now at the outside of the house. And again, left arrow key, walk through the house. There's the dining room in front of me. Hit the add, key, no. And so again, I'm going to now look to the right. And as I look towards, that side of the house, I will click this. Okay. And now I'm going to pan back to the left-hand side. Okay. And we're just kind of panning around a little bit. And you can do, changes and so on in the model. Okay, so if you make an editing change somewhere, there's a light switch that clearly at this stage I can erase that and take it out so that it doesn't appear in the model, and I'll have to go back and add that in, which would then again show in the model. And so I'm just going to use a combination of changes to maneuver around the house. And even though I just did that, I kind of was like, oops, what did I just do? I'll just backtrack to the previous keyframe and see where it takes me. Okay, so far so good. And now I can pick up there, and we're going to maneuver around just to simply look inside the bedroom over here. Okay, and so as I do that, I will stop. So all I want to do to see this keyframe or see this model now is I will just click the plus sign, and I'm like, okay, as I'm doing this, I'm realizing that's taking too long to get inside. I can adjust and even speed up the frame just by holding down the mouse wheel and adjusting this. So now I've just, okay, let's, now we're moving much quicker. That's better for what we're trying to do. Let's get inside. Now I'm doing all of this in shaded mode. In time, this would be something I would want to save out as in textured mode. I understand. But once we have done that, I will stop it. Okay. I would change that into texture mode, which I'm not going to do at this stage, but I am going to come in and I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to say, prelim walkthrough. Okay. And so that's the name of the file, the animation file itself. And so when I do that, and I now go to File, and I'm going to go to Save, okay, and Save As, and I'm going to pick Video. And here, I'm just going to call this prelim, okay, so pretty quick. And it's going to be I'm going to use the prelim walkthrough. And so now it's just going through and it's calculating, the number of frames it's going to take to do this animation. Now there's 670 of them, and that's why I'm staying in shaded mode, because I want this to be, pretty quick to get us through. So you can see, it's taken us, 20 seconds to get 100 of these frames. So inside of about 2 minutes, we're going to get there. And when this is done, what it's going to do is it's going to give me the opportunity to then go in and upload this to YouTube, which could then be shared with our client, so that they can go in. And so, just while this is going through and finishing for us, okay, this is something I do for almost every project at this point. And I'm going to tell you, it truly, if you take the time to design the model, okay, not only are you getting a 3D, you would be designing towards the bill of materials, but your client is going to be able to see exactly what their model looks like, okay? And when they see the model, keep in mind, I took you over, to this kitchen, right, versus what the actual, 2D look, or SoftPlan rendering look like. You get a happy client because they know exactly what it looks like. And so again, here's the bathroom, right? And then as we look at the, this one is clearly got, as it's just rendering, you can see reflections. Okay, you can see, the bump mapping or relief depth that's on there. Okay, as far as the model is concerned. Now, you can right click edit on any light fixture that's in there, and part of the light fixture would then is you can go to the light tab and you can set it to on. Once it's turned on, go to the custom option, and that would allow you to then go in and modify the brightness, even the color of the light fixture. So if you wanted a more of a yellow hue as opposed to the bright white hue that's there, okay, that would do it for you as well. Okay, so that's how you can, do all of that. This is just wrapping up here. Okay, and we've got about 70 frames to go, and it's worth it to see this, to end the class so you can see exactly how to manipulate the 3D. Okay, there would be certain things I would change in there, but as far as the animation is concerned, this is close enough for what I'm trying to do. Again, in a shaded mode as opposed to a textured mode, which is what you would probably do when you're going to give it to a client. And so at this point now, we're just simply going through and compressing the files to create the WMV file. And so, at this stage, what it's going to do is it's going to pull up my video preview. Okay, and so you can see now we're going into the house here. All right, we're looking off to the right on the video preview. Okay, and now we're looking to the left, and we're going to walk down the hall. If I'm happy with this, I hit the upload button. Okay, and that's going to allow me to upload it to YouTube. And it's that simple, guys. Hit you with as much as I can in 45 minutes. I did record the class, so I will be posting it to our YouTube site as well as our socials, early next week, and so you can go back and review some of this information that's there. And again, if 3D is something that you want to see more in depth, and maybe I go a little bit slower in more detail, I do have a 3D class that is coming up in the second week of July. I would love to see you there. Other than that, join us next week for the Softlist Friday Fundamental. You can see just the ins and outs of the bill of materials as taught by one of our top instructors. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you very much.